to turn to the opposition to it, it's broad-ranging, and it's been a long struggle to this point. I want to focus on one particular obstacle that is encountered by the opposition, and that's the association of Israel with the Jewish community in general. It's a well-used rhetorical and ideological device, and I think that it should be considered more closely, especially now that it's beginning to be undermined, and it's beginning to be undermined and noticed by the Israeli government and the movement that supports it. Well, the most clear expression of this identification is the principle that Israel is the state of the Jewish people, not just the Jewish people who live in it, the Jewish people everywhere. Now, the first implication is the one for Palestinians. The Palestinian refugees are not allowed to come back. The Palestinian citizens who are systematically discriminated against, and the Palestinians living under occupation who aren't even citizens. The implications to them are clear. It's not their state. It's a state that's not interested in their welfare, and in fact is interested in the perpetuation of their state as refugees and stateless people. But there is another implication to this position, and that is one which instrumentalizes the Jewish community and puts the needs, the perceived needs of the state in opposition to the needs of the Jewish community. Here is how this is described by Natan Sharansky, a human rights icon to some, and the former Minister of Diaspora Affairs in Jerusalem. He's speaking about a bombing in the Jewish center in Argentina. Actually, I just on the way here heard that there was a shooting in it was a Kansas City of some Jewish centers. So this is a similar situation. This is how Natan Sharansky describes a situation such as this. The state of Israel was born in order to be a national home for the Jewish people. Zionist leaders have always declared that the Jewish state belongs not just to its citizens, but to Jewish people as a whole. For example, Argentinian Jews paid a heavy price for the Israeli decisions when, in revenge for the elimination of a leader of Hezbollah, the organization blew up Jewish community center and murdered hundreds of Jews. Now, Sharansky, I think, he must think that this thing is a fine thing. Not that there was a bombing. I'm sure he's opposed to the bombing, but he just sees it as it's only right that Jews would be associated with Israel, even if that means that they're considered responsible for actions of Israel in Lebanon. When Israel is fighting Hezbollah, every Jewish Argentinian is fighting Hezbollah, according to Sharansky, whether they like it or not, whether these Jews are interested in this fight or if they're not. In that, he shares the assumptions of the people who presumably carried out the attack. So these are two consequences of this position. One, at the expense of Palestinians, and also at the expense of Jewish communities everywhere. Another consequence of this identification is that it lends itself to an easy way out to assign American responsibility for American foreign policy to the Jewish community or to a mythical entity, a mythical Jewish entity that is all-powerful, recalling really anti-Semitic myths. And this sort of phenomenon is described by Abe Foxman of the Anti-Defamation League. He describes this situation this way. There's a very thin line between the perceptions of Jewish power by anti-Semites and the actual power that Jews have in the world. Jews are not as powerful as our enemies think we are, but we're not going to try very hard to convince him otherwise. So this is a man who the Anti-Defamation League supposedly you would think would be against anti-Semitism, but here he is not trying too hard to counter anti-Semitic myths if he perceives them as useful. As I said, a significant part of progress in struggle for Palestinian solidarity has been just that, to undermine the perception of automatic Jewish allegiance to Israel. Some of the co-sponsors and American organizations, JVP, and others are working precisely on that point, and it's a very significant one in Israel. The echo that it has is very much felt because the perception in Israeli politics is that Israel does depend on unconditional support of the Jewish community in the West. This is recognized, this undermining of automatic support is recognized by Peter Beinart. He wrote a book called The Crisis of Zionism, and considers that, and along with many Israeli leaders, as one of the major threats to Israel, in what they perceive as a threat to Israel, meaning a threat to current Israeli policies, current Israeli expansionist policies. Well, this situation of a Jewish community that's not automatically in support of Israel is not an original prophecy of Peter Beinart, but actually a return to a prevailing situation in living memory. And that is the situation that existed before the Second World War. The major Jewish political forces in Eastern Europe were anti-Zionist. It seems unimaginable, especially in Israeli politics, to think that the Jewish community is not identified with Zionism, but that was precisely the situation before the war. The Bund, in particular, and its sphere of influence, the largest political organizations in Poland and Russia before Russia, they were banned by Bolsheviks, but the most significant Jewish political organization, one of the largest political organizations in Poland, is completely written out of Israeli history. Tens of thousands of Israeli students go to Poland every year for what is considered a history study trip, yet the names of Bund leaders such as Marek Edelman, Abrasha Blum, Victor Alter, and Henrik Ehrlich are completely unknown in Israel. It's not completely unknown. Some of the people, some historians do know these names, and they were precisely the ones who objected to giving honorary degrees to Marek Edelman, one of the leaders of the uprising in the ghetto Warsaw. So Israeli historians, this is an account by Moshe Arens, actually. Moshe Arens, an Israeli right-wing politician, but honest enough to recognize the contribution of the Bund to the uprising in the ghetto. He accounts how he attempted to convince Israeli universities to give an honorary degree to Marek Edelman, who's recognized as before he died, a national hero in Poland, but did not get any recognition in Israel. At the same time as such an effort is invested in the study of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and the Holocaust. These names are written out of history. And it isn't just the names of Bund leaders. The censorship of history includes also Zionist activists. The case of Chaika Klinger is a Holocaust survivor from Bedzin, who was part of the resistance there during the Second World War. Her memoir of the case is filled with disappointment and complaint against her movement, Shomer HaTzair, which refused to support them despite repeated pleas. When she eventually, after she survived, she emigrated to Israel and attempted to publish her memoirs. They were severely censored to remove the parts that contain criticism of the movement. And this parallel history, as you will, that is not recognized for what it is, exists in practically every Jewish institution which isn't explicitly Zionist, contains in its institutional memory and sometimes living memory a situation where Zionism was a minority movement and the Jewish community was focused on other priorities, such as local struggles. One of the main principles of the Bund was that their political priorities should be local ones. Another political principle was the importance of the Yiddish culture and the Yiddish language. And I've actually had a chance to interview an old Bundist in New York last week, and he made a point about how the Yiddish language itself naturally lends itself to a more forgiving and flexible expression, which leads to a more pragmatic politics, unsuitable to a purposeful state, such as a Bolshevik Soviet Union and a Zionist Israel. In that tradition of anti-Zionism that does exist, virtually all of it can trace back its roots to the Bund and its sphere. An important, a notable example is the case of Matzpen, a new left group that was founded in Israel in 1962. People who left the Communist Party over issues of political independence and censorship. Their political agenda is similar to that of the Bund in that they're Marxist, anti-Bolsheviks, and anti-Zionist. Unlike the Bund in its heyday, despite their attempts, they were never a workers' movement. Matzpen, although strived to mobilize workers and to lead them to a unified socialist Middle East, their work was limited to intellectual work of producing plans for a de-Zionized Israel, as they described it. Their legacy influenced groups that came after them, and also at the time, the New Left in Europe. A number of key members of Matzpen left for Europe, and there influenced the New Left, and that reverberates to this day.